Alright, the topic for today is liability for the acts of the company. 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 Now the starting point is for us to first refresh our memory on the trust of corporate governance, that is organs of corporate administration. And I remember that I told you that owing to the nature of the law that says that a company is what? A legal person, that is the corporate personality of the company puts a company in the same pedestal as a natural person, with its own life, with its own existence, with its own rights, with its own duties, and with its own assets and liabilities. As a result of this, it means that the company should be able to exercise certain powers that natural persons can as well exercise. If the company is a person, just like a human being, things that human being can do, company should be able to do them. But like I also pointed out that the reality is that what? The company is still what? A legal abstraction. It does not exist, and it's physical. So the question then is, how can the company live out its existence as a legal person? From 87 sub 1, we have been able to establish. It says that what? The company shall act through what? Through the members in general meeting, or the what? Or the board of directors. I told you these are to be regarded as primary organs of the company. And it proceeds to say that the company can also act through officers or agents that have been appointed by or under the authority of the members in general meeting or the board of directors. So the summation of all we've learned so far, as far as corporate governance is concerned, is that there are certain individuals or certain bodies that when they are acting, it is deemed as the company acting. And from that we established that these individuals or these bodies are the members in general meeting, that is the shareholders, the owners of the business. There are certain powers that when they exercise it, it is deemed that they are exercising it on behalf of the world, on behalf of the company. And we also say that there is also another body known as the board of directors. I told you the board of directors are the skilled men, the business experts. And generally from 87 sub 3, we have been able to establish that the general power to run or manage for the business lies in the board of directors. But we have also been able to establish from 87 sub 2 that when we want to determine the part of these organs of the company, either the board of directors, members in general meeting, or the managing director, why do they normally have the managing director? Why? For extra words. I told you the managing director is one of the directors in the board, but he is usually appointed to administer or see to the day-to-day running of the company. So directors only come for meetings, but the managing director is one that is always on ground and he sees the day-to-day running of the affair. He is also an organ of the company. Do you understand? As we shall see established by pursuant to section 89 of Kama 24. Now we have also been able to establish that how do you determine the powers of these organs of the company? How? First, I told you that if you check Kama tried to share the powers of the board of directors and also the powers of members in general meeting. Say for instance, things like alteration of share capital, things like removal of directors, appointment of directors and all. Members in general meeting can exercise powers in that particular instance. Why? Because you see sections in Kama that says they can exercise the power. Kama also allotted or assigned certain powers or conferred certain powers on the board of directors. Meaning that when you check Kama 2, you see that certain powers can only be exercised by the board of directors, like declaration of dividend. When you check section 158, that deals with when they can call up on shares. It says the board of directors shall. So these are powers that the board of directors should exercise. But like I pointed out, that from 87 sub 2, it says you can use the articles of association to also determine the powers of the board of directors. What does this mean? It means that all the powers that Kama has not share. If Kama did not share a particular power, the company can now share that power in its attributes of association, either to the board of directors or to what? To the members in general meeting. Meaning you use the attributes of association to fill in the gaps, the void, the vacuum that Kama has created. So let us say there is an issue, and board of directors are saying, we are the one that can exercise this power. Members in general meeting are saying, no, we are the one that can exercise power. And you check what? Kama. And that particular matter, you don't see anything on it as far as Kama is concerned. So that this Kama is silent. So in that instance, you can now say your own attributes of what? Association. Once it comes to this particular power, it is the members in general meeting that should exercise it. Or it is what? The board of directors that should exercise it. But you can only use the attributes of association to share powers that Kama has not shared. If Kama shares a particular power to, let us say, members in general meeting, you cannot use your own attribute of association to now give it to the board of directors. Do you understand? Why? Because that provision will become repugnant, section 7.2 3 of Kama 2020. Is that understood? So you only use your attribute of association to fill in the gaps. Only the powers that Kama has not shared. Kama is silent. So you use your attribute of association to give it a voice. Do you understand? Not that you use Peter to rub Peter to pay for. No. Now, another instance is, let me ask you the question. What about when there is an issue? The board of directors is claiming that they are the ones that have the power to exercise this particular. Oh, they have the competence, the jurisdiction to exercise this power. And the members in the general meeting are also saying the same thing. Now, if they check Kama did not see anything. Where is the next thing you have to check? If Kama is silent on who can exercise the power, where is the next place that you have to check? The attribute of association, in terms of two, you now use the association to fill in the gaps created by Kama. But let us now say that the association is also now silent. And the association to the not state who can exercise the power. The question is, who can then exercise the power? Who can exercise the power? I'm asking the question. Kama is silent as to whom between the board of directors and the members in general meeting can exercise the power. You check the article of association is also silent. Maybe it was illegally, it was inelegantly drafted. They didn't pay attention to. So who can then exercise this power? You first of all said, board of directors, we have changed members in the general meeting. Who? What did he say? Who can exercise this now? We've done this thing, it's just a recap, so that the reason I'm doing this recap is for those people that are new, and because you need it so that we need to understand the topic you are actually supposed to do. Why? Why is it that any matter in which, as in according to you, any matter in which the Kama is silent and the article of association is also silent, why are you saying that the board of directors that can exercise? Why not the members in general meeting can own the business? But the members in general meeting don't they also make decisions for the company? It's what? Yeah, it's primarily what the duty of the board of directors. That is what your 87 sub 3 comes into being, becomes relevant. 87 sub 3 says that you see the general part, the body that has that inherent, that natural intrinsic part to manage what the business of the company is actually the board of directors. Are you following? Are you with me? So meaning that when you see anything in Kama giving the power to the members in general meeting, that means the Kama has actually taken away from the general power of management of the board of directors and gave it to members in general meeting. Or you can use your attitude of association. But understand that where Kama is silent, where the attitude of association is also silent, then automatically it is taking out the board of directors deciding with the responsibility of discharging that duty. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's how to understand section 87 sub 3. Are you with me? So if in your own company, for instance, you see a matter that Kama has not shared, a power that Kama has not shared. Are you with me? And you do not want your board of directors to have the power to what? To exercise that particular power. What do? You use your articles of association and give that power to the members in general meeting. But if you do not do so, what will happen? That means your article of association are now silent. Once both documents are silent, the power is automatically taken to what? To report around the board of directors, because they are the ones that have the general power of management of the business. Is that understood? Now, let us say that this particular issue now, or this particular power, we have now said, oh yes, fine, it's the board of directors. What if the board of directors becomes unable or refuse to actually exercise that power? The question is, what should then happen? This power now, you know that, look at how we are taking it through. We have established that first, to know between the members of the general meeting and the board of directors, which one has the power to work, to exercise a particular power. You check Kama. If Kama does not say it, what do? You check what? Your articles of association. The article of association is also silent. It automatically means that it is the board of directors, it sells something. Now, what if the board of directors now become unable? What is the authority for that? Let's remember that is the 7 sub-5. A 7 sub-5 is seen as reserved powers, residual powers of the members in general meeting. So where the general power has not been exercised by the board of directors, there's a body must make decision for the company. Then it will fall back, it will revert to the members in general meeting. And that's why you hear at the JCA, in that case of total old days versus Drojaye, the court was saying that when there is a general power that has been conferred on the body, and there is now another more specific power that is taken from that general power, it automatically means that once you have not exercised that general power, that particular body can then exercise its own specific power. Do you understand? At the end of the day, you see that we are talking about people making decisions for the company. People making decisions for the company. Someone checks section 141 of Kama. Section 141 of Kama 2020. Check it. This thing is not supposed to stress you guys because we've done this. You should be laughing, you should be smiling right now. And you should be happy to teach others. But the countenances on your faces and everything was just confused. Have I not got it? It's tricky. At least I can still understand you came at the later point. But this ones, okay, you are giving us. Is this Alex? 141, what does 141 of Kama say? Subject to any limitation in the articles of association. With respect to the number of shares that may be issued. The company has what? The power. The company what? Has the what? Power. To do what? The company has what power to determine whether to issue shares. Hello? Who has the power to determine when to issue shares? Whether to issue shares? On what considerations to issue shares? Who has the power? According to 141, I just read out now. You are not following. I'm not asking a question on this thing. I'm asking a question based on what he has read out. According to section 141, I said open and read section 141. You guys will not get this thing except you follow like this. If you read section 141, it is saying that what? The company is the one that has the power, right? To what? To determine when, on what requirements, so to say, circumstances, considerations to issue shares. Now, when you say the company, who is the company? Because it just says what? The company. Who is the company? Yes, because it's okay. You ask me question, who is the company? Who can determine when to issue shares there? So, it's VOD. Once you see the company, the board of directors. Okay? And if the board of directors, what does 87 sub 1 say? You should not be checking. You should not be checking by now. You should know it. The company shall act. The company shall act through the board of directors and the members in general meeting, primary organs, and any officer or agent appointed or authorized by them. So you cannot just say the company is what? Board of directors. Because the company can also act through the members in general meeting. So according to Professor Goa, this is the first dean of faculty of law in Maryland. Professor Goa, that wise man, I see his picture there. Yes, company law aficionado. He said that the company can either be the members in general meeting or the board of directors. Hello? The company can either be what? The members in general meeting or the board of directors. You see the reason I cited section 141. The reason is that when you check Kama, there are certain provisions where Kama just said the company can, because of them, who is the company? Who can then be the what? The company. It's different when they say, oh, members in general meeting shall help. You don't have the power for members in general meeting. It's different from areas like section 158 that says board of directors. You know it is the board of directors. But there are provisions like 141 that says the company is the one that has the power. So who then is the company? The company is a legal abstraction. I told you from Freeman and Locke versus Purpose Park, the company must act through human agent. This is division, so you cannot expect it to be taking this thing. Because you see about this thing. But you know, we are looking at liability for the act of the company. So we should be able to appreciate what it means by the company. Which body can serve as the company. So that we can then look at how whatever it is that they do will be taken as the company doing is. Do you understand? Not any offense cannot just act for the company. And if anybody just acts anyhow, it does not mean that the company will be held liable. We need to know those whose acts can be taken as the act of the company, so that their acts can be the ground for liability on the company. Now, anytime you see anything about the company, any provision that has the company, understand that the company can either be the board of directors or the members in general meeting. But this will still raise a conflict, is that not so? Because it seems that both of them can exercise the power. Right? So two of them, the two bodies can start arguing and say, no, we are the company. They don't have to say, we are the company. So what can you do in this instance? This is another instance where your article of association become more relevant. That's why you see that where 141, the introductory word is from 141 says subject to the provisions of the articles of association. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can use your articles of association to define who the company is. So in the own article of association, we have said the members in general meeting shall at all times, maybe upon whatever consideration, upon whatever consultation, determine when and on what considerations to issue shares. In that your own company, that you put it in the article of association, that it is the members in general meeting that can do it. That means the members in general meeting is the company that can rectify to. In the first company, they would have put it in their own article of association and say that that is the board of directors. Remember, the article of association are very key and fundamental to the life of every company. It is the article of association that gives you the opportunity to decide what you want for your company. So all this expression of the company, meaning that at the end of the day, it may either be the board of directors or the members in general meeting, depending on what you have in the words, depending on what you have in the articles of association. Do you understand what I'm saying? But the question is, what about if your articles of association are now silent? Let us say in your own article of association, we did not determine who the company is. Now the issue arose as to, you said the company can issue shares, can determine when and how to issue shares. Who then will be the company?
When I say now, let's say that I'm going to section 141, saying that your article of
association to determine who the company should be. Do you understand? Say, as if for the purpose of determining when and what considerations to issue shares, you can give that power to either or both of them. And anyone that you give the power to, will automatically be deemed as the company. Do you understand? Say,
just in this situation.
Just in this situation now, of course, just for this purpose. It may be that another provision that says the company, You may share this one to the board of directors. Another one that says the company may share the one to the members of war. In generality, that's the essence of having war, your articles of association. Remember when we treated the articles of association in the first semester, if you read section 32 alongside section 34, it said that we can have module war articles. But companies are still allowed to alter the war, module war articles, or to create what they bespoke war articles for them war for themselves. If you check module articles, that is the one that CSC has just made, I'm sure some of these provisions that has the company, they themselves will have shared the power, maybe to the board of directors or the members in general war meeting. But if you do not like some of them, then you can alter. But remember that once you have altered, you have to war file. Are you following? It's only when you take it as a whole that you don't have to file, but that's not our business control. Now, I'm not asking you the question. I'm not saying what if the articles of association too are silence. It did not say who can determine when and how to allocate. Who then can have the power? That's the board of directors that they automatically refer to their general war power. 87 was sub war 3. What if they don't have to decide? Let us say they are unable. Then to revert towards the members in general war meeting. I'm only doing this so that you'll be able to appreciate, so that you'll be able to understand your 87 sub 1 war to 87 sub war 5. This thing is not an abstraction. This is something that you can actually use to govern the running of the company. So today, what we actually want to interrogate today is actually the liability for the act of the war company. Because we have noticed that the company can be the board of directors, members in general meeting, managing directors, or any other officers or what? Or agents that have been authorized by this war, by this point. So, liability for the act of the war company. We start with section 89. Section 89. Section 89 of CAM. You see that the heading there actually says what? Liability for the act of the company. See, if you are not going to read the provision yourself and just think you are going to learn it, you will not be able to really understand it. If you like, don't look at your CAM. Now, what does section 89 say? Section 89 says, any act of the members in general meeting, any act of the members in general meeting, the board of war directors or managing war director, while carrying on in the usual way the business of the company, shall be treated as the act of the company itself, and the company is criminally and civilly liable to the same extent as if it were a natural war person. Now the very first point I want you to note about section 89, so that you not confuse it with other provisions, is that section 89 deals with liability of the company based on the acts of the primary war organs of the company. Based on the acts of the primary organs of the company. That is, it deals with only instances where the board of directors, the managing directors, or the members in general meeting have acted. Let me explain. Remember what I said when we interrogated 87 sub 1. 87 sub 1 said was the company shall act through members in general meeting or board of directors. I told you that these are the primary organs, is that not true? Right? But the 87 sub 1 still proceeded to say also the company can also act through officers or what? Agents that have been appointed or authorized by what? The board of directors or members in general meeting. These ones are who? They are the what? They are the secondary war agents. And do you not get the main organ of the company and the board of directors, the members in war, general meeting, and the managing war directors. But I told you they can delegate. They can authorize another war body. There are certain provisions in what? In the act. Where you see that what? At times when the board of directors want to act, they have through committees. In fact, one of the principles of corporate governance, as contained in all the different codes of corporate governance, the relevant one being the 2018 Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, see that it basically recommends that when board of directors, when they want to act, they should have two committees. But at times, the issue they want to act on, they may not necessarily have the here without. So they may actually have two committees, those people that have the expertise. When these people are acting, they are acting based on the authority of the board of directors. They are not primary war organs. they fall under what? Secondary war organs. Are you following? Or at times, the board of directors may reach what? A decision. When they reach what decision, they may appoint one of the directors to carry out or to discharge that particular war duty. That is not the board of directors acting. That's not the director war acting. Do you understand? The board of directors is supposed to act collectively. Members in general meeting, they are supposed to act for collectively. So when one director is now acting, that means that director must be acting based on the authority of the board of directors or the members in general war meeting. That single director is the secondary war organ. Are you following? The board of directors, members in general meeting, managing directors, they are what? They are the primary war organs. Hello, are you following? But for 89, it's simply saying, is that since you have established that Kama gives the board of directors, members in general meeting, some powers. When they are exercising these powers, it is taken as what? Whatever it is that they do can what? Hold what? The company war to liability. Their acts now become the act of the war company. That's how the company gives out its what? Its corporate war personality. Because of the act of this war, human war agents. That's why in Freeman law came out of the Bocos Park, you see that Lord Gipton was saying that what a company has to act on through human war agents. So when these people are acting, 89, so this 89, what it's saying is that anything they do will be taken to have been done by the war company. So there can be liability as far as the company is concerned. That's why if let us say the board of directors decided that okay, we want to issue shares, and the issue was shares. And you bought shares on outsider, and somehow you had an issue with it, you can bring an action against you. You say against the board of directors. Of course not. You bring the action against the what? The company. That's when they were acting for the war for the company. So 89 deals with what? Liability on the what? On the company based on the act of the primary war organs. Very important though, because there's another provision for the secondary organs. So you must understand 89. 89 says any act of the members in general meeting, first one, members in general meeting, the board of war directors, two, or what? Managing war director. He did not say, or whoever it is that they was that they authorize. He didn't say so. So it limits the liability on the company as far as the law is concerned simply to the act of these primary war organs. That is the first thing for you to understand. Now, another thing to understand is that it says when they are carrying on in the usual way of the business of the company. Now, before the company can be liable, it's not enough. It's not enough for you to say that, oh yes, the members in general meeting acting. It's not enough for you to say the board of directors acting. You must also show that they acting in what? In the usual way. In the usual way of the business of the work of the company. That is the way they are supposed to work, act. Do you understand what I'm saying? The way they are supposed to work, act. If the acting was in the usual work way, then that is when the company can become more like. So if the article of association, for instance, you say the board of directors can do something, the board of directors now did that particular work thing in accordance to it, then that is the company is more like. But then the question then is, what if, for instance, the managing director or the members in general meeting or the board of directors, what if they do not act in the usual way of doing business? Will the company be held liable? Very important. There are two conditions as far as the denial is concerned. Two conditions before the company will be held liable. The first is that the act must be either by the members in general meeting, the board of directors, or the what? Or the managing directors. That's the first thing. But it's not enough to just say the managing director acted. No, it's not enough. You must also show that what he did is is in the usual way of what? Of doing business. So, for instance, he had the authority to do so. And once they've done this, what will happen to the company? The company can be civilly liable or criminally liable. Yes, let us say they acted in the usual way of doing business. And they were the ones that acted. But what they did amounts to what? To a crime. Then they can be held for life. And those of you that have thought, remember, do you remember that provision of de facto directors? De facto directors. But remember no 269 on the job directors. Now the job director is one that is duly appointed. I think that de facto means that what? You are a director by way of law. Fact, not by law. But there is a provision, in fact there are two provisions that say if it is the company that holds the person that is the de facto director out as what? As a director, the company can be liable. And if it is that person that holds himself out, he can also be liable. For those of you that you know around doing this, you should check, you are supposed to check your notes, it should be there. In a particular provision. I can't remember the exact provision. Yes, you also see that 269. Has somebody checked 269 or so go to section 269? You know the reason I'm doing this? The reason I'm doing this is to show you that there are instances where these members in general meeting, this board of directors, these managing directors, that what they do can make the company to either be criminally liable or civilly liable. We just cite an example of this section is 89. Of instances where the act of any of these three bodies will be deemed to be the act of the company for the purpose of holding the company liable. Have you opened this system? What's there? Yes. Number 269 sub 3. 269 sub 3 says where a person not duly appointed acts or hold himself out as a director, he commits what? An offense. And is liable of conviction to imprisonment, blah blah blah. That is what the personal or individual or liability of the person holding himself out as a director. Now, sub 4 says if it is the company that holds him out as what? As a director. If it is what? The company that holds him out as a director, the company is liable to a fine. If you are liable to a fine, what is that? A crime. Are you with me? Hey, who is the company in this instance? Meaning that if the board of directors should go and hold somebody out, somebody that has not been duly appointed as a director, to allow him to be in your meetings, allow him to contribute in the minutes of the meeting, always put it there. Then in that instance, that act of the board of directors will be taken to be the act of the company. And in that instance, the company can be civilly or criminally held liable. Are you following? I've only cited section 269. Don't get it twisted. I just cited section 269 sub 4 of CAMA 2020 to show you an example or an instance in which where any of these bodies act in the usual way of doing business, the company can be criminally liable. You know, the policy of the law is to not have what? De facto directors. They don't want the job directors. The reason our corporate regime still recognizes de facto directors is so as to protect what outsiders and this what protected parties. Now I asked the question, I said, what if they did not act in the usual way of doing business? Will the company still be held liable? If they do not act in the usual way of doing business, will the company still be held liable? Before we answer that question, let's go back to 89. Let's go back to 89. See that 89 says, provided what that, told you that this particular part of it is not easy. 89 says, provided what that, what is the essence of provided that? It's a qualification. You know that the general law is to say that when these people act the usual way of doing business, the company is liable, right? Now this, what to consider now, all this provided that, all these paragraphs A, B, and all, is to show you when they will act, and yet the company will not be held liable. Hello, are you following? They are like exceptions to the rule that when these organs of company act, company will be held liable. So it said provided was that A, the company shall not incur civil liability to any person if that person had actual knowledge at the time of the transaction in question that the general meeting, board of director, or members or the managing director, as the case may be, had no power in the act in the matter, or had acted in an irregular manner, or of having regard to the position with or relationship to the company, he ought to have known of the absence of such power or of their irregularity. Look at what this is saying. You see, if these three organs, if they acted, are you following me? Ordinarily, once they act in the usual way of doing business, the company is supposed to be held for liable. Are you following me? But A is telling you that when these people act, the company will not be liable if there is actual or what, or implied what, knowledge. If there is what, actual or what, implied what, knowledge. Meaning that if the managing director is acting and you knew that this managing director is acting beyond or exceeding his work, but yes, you dealt with what, you dealt with it. Ordinarily, the act of the managing director is supposed to be the act of the work company. This is saying that you have both actual work knowledge. The company will not be held for liable. That is it, provided that the company shall not incur civil liability to any work person if that person had what actual work knowledge at the time of the transaction in question that the general meeting, board of directors, or any of them, as the case may be, had no power in the act. So this is actual knowledge. So when you knew that the members in general meeting know that you are dealing with, you knew that what? They had what? You knew that they had acted, that they had no power. What does it mean that they had no power? What does it mean? Say for instance, the members in general meeting, the power they are exercising is the power that the board of directors should have what? Exercised. And you knew. You knew maybe because you had, you were privy to the content of the articles of organization. We come to that it's not a cause that you are actually what? Privy to it. But supposing you knew, but yet you dealt with them. The law is saying that the company will not be war, will not be civilly war, held war, like why? Because of your actual war notice, because of the actual knowledge that what you have. So actual knowledge is an exception to an instance where the liability of the board of directors, members in general meeting, or the managing directors will be taken to be the act of the war company. It's an exception. But it's not only actual notice. There's also what, it's not only actual knowledge. There's also what implied war knowledge. If you look at it, that paragraph they proceeded to say, or having regard to his position, having regard to his position, having regard to his work position. See, there are two things to consider here. Or having what regard to his work position. That's the first one. The second one is what? It says what? If you are not having regard to his position, you have regard to his what? Relationship with the company. Or relationship with what? With the company. Or relationship with what? With the company. Two things. Maybe you did not know, truly. But we are saying that having regard to what? To your position. Or having regard to your relationship with what? With the company. You ought to have what? Known. You ought to have what? Known. In that instance, that particular knowledge is what? Is implied. Also, what does it mean when Kama says having regard to your position? For instance, remember, or perhaps you will not remember, but let me point it out to you. Now, do you know that a director, as much as a director can be an insider, a director can also be what? An outsider. No, the director, as much as a director can be an insider, and is part of the world of the company, he can also be an outsider, like he can be in the same position as the creditors of the world for the company. Do you understand? Because nothing stops the company from contracting with what? With its members. So a single director can decide, say maybe you want to borrow the company money, your own money, not as part of your duties as what? As a director. automatically you have become what? An outsider. Hello? But now, let us not say that in the articles of association, it is the board of directors that are supposed to exercise that power. Or members, let's say members in the database. But when we wanted to borrow the money, it was not the board of directors that was exercise the power. The law is saying that having regard to your position, because you are what, by a director. Are you following? Because you are a director, your position is one that you should know that the person or the body you are dealing with does what the appropriate for. I don't know whether you understand what we are saying. You are a director. It is the company you are a director. You want to deal with what? With the company. And the board of directors is now the one dealing with you. It's not your company. You are supposed to actually work. No. So because of your position, you are taken to have what? The implied knowledge that the person or the body you dealt with is not the appropriate work. But are you following? So this one can be explained that way. But this one says your relationship with the work with the company. Your relationship with the company is in terms of, let us say, you are a customer of the world, of the company. Or should I say, some sort of what? Long time or customer. It's not today you are beginning with what? With the company. You are beginning with the company. So you already know that when you want to do this thing, this is the appropriate work. But then on this particular transaction, you can't put another work body. And it's then shown that what this body was not the appropriate work. But say because of your work, of your relationship, you are their good customer. Because of your relationship, it is taking that what you had in life or knowledge. Do you understand? Hello? Is that understood?